She got good books. Sorry, books. I didn't finish them. Okay. Okay. Evening, everyone. Tonight and tomorrow is Asara b'Tevet. We all know. Also, Yom HaKadosh HaKlali. Asara b'Tevet, one of the 4 fasts that we have for the Churban. Along, of course, Yud Zayin b'Tammuz, Tisha B'Av, and Tzom Gedalia. So let's spend a few minutes talking about Asara b'Tevet. So we know this is the day in which the siege began, the siege of Yerushalayim. And there are 2 anomalies in 2 ways, at least from a calendrical point of view, that in our current calendar, Asara b'Tevet is unique, has something which the other fasts don't have. On the one hand, this is the only fast in our calendar now that falls out on Friday, which has its own complications. We know about tomorrow, we have to have a Mincha a little bit earlier, because we have Kriyat Torah, Vayechal, etc. The other fasts don't fall out on Friday, as we know. By the way, next year as well, Asara b'Tevet falls out on Friday. Then I think it's another 9 years before it happens again. So, and the other fact is that it's the only fast of the 4 fasts in our current calendar that does not fall out on Shabbat. Right? Yud Zayin b'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av always fall out on the same day of the week. They're exactly three weeks apart. Fairly often it happens. Those or Tzom Gedalia will fall out on Shabbat. And we know when it falls out on Shabbat, we don't fast. The only time that we fast on Shabbat is Yom Kippur. Otherwise, the other fasts are pushed off to Sunday, to the following day. Now, the Abu Draham makes an amazing statement over here. Everybody quotes the Abu Draham. Forget to quote what the Beit Yosef has to say about it. But the Abu Draham says the following. He says, it seems to me that if Asara b'Tevet would fall on Shabbat, again, it can't, but he says if it would fall out on Shabbat, then we would fast, says the Abu Draham. The Beit Yosef brings it. He quotes, he says, I don't know what he's talking about. He says, I don't know where he gets this from. Those are his words. He says, Minayin lo yadati minayin. I don't know what his source is. But the Abu Draham says, were Asara b'Tevet to be on a Shabbat, there would be a fast. So he bases it on the pasuk. The pasuk says, it talks about Be'etzem hayom hazeh. Actually says it twice. It says the pasuk in Yechezkel, Vayidva Hashem alai b'shana atziit b'chodesh asri b'asor lachodesh lemor ben adam tov lecha et shem hayom et etzem hayom hazeh. Write down this date, the etzem hayom hazeh. Samach melech Bavel el Yerushalayim, king of Bavel came to siege Yerushalayim. Be'etzem hayom hazeh. So it says it twice in the same pasuk. Be'etzem hayom hazeh. Part of what Mfarshim point out, that the Navi has to be told. Be'etzem hayom hazeh has to be told that something here is happening. This is one of the things that makes Asara b'Tevet unique. You think about the other fasts. Tisha B'Av, Churban Habayit, Yud Zayin b'Tammuz, the walls are breached. Okay, we can think about it. We can picture it in our minds. It's a bit like Lahavdil today with the walls. Everybody's asking, what's the Tmunat Nitzachon, right? What's the picture of the victory, the image that is going to show that we've, obviously things are a bit more complicated than that. There's not just one Tmunat Nitzachon. But there was, in those days, the Tmunat HaChurban, the image, what happened. Something happened on those days when the walls were breached. Everybody realized, everybody recognizes. When the Mikdash is destroyed, everybody recognizes something's happening. The siege began, and maybe this is part of the message of Asara b'Tevet. When it begins, nobody even realizes that something's going on. This is the beginning of the process. This is the root cause. But something's happening here. It's time to fix. It's time to change now before it's too late. Now, and things are changing. Things have happened. So the Navi has to be told, something's going on. Something's happening. This is not just another day. In retrospect, in hindsight, it's easy to see it, and that's maybe easier. Maybe that's why we look back, and on this day we recognize something here is happening. So says the Abu Draham, if it was because it's be'etzem hayom hazeh, there is something different, something more severe of this day, even then the other fast days themselves. So as I said, the Beit Yosef rejects it. Practical halacha. It's not a practical question because in our calendar it won't fall on Shabbat. In the future, le'atid lavo, the Rabbi Kenigsberg tells us it's the fast days. Yafchu leBeit Yehuda l'sason v'lesimcha l'moadim tovim. So then when maybe it will fall out on Shabbat again in the future when we have Kiddush HaChodesh al pi re'iyah, but then it will be a Yom Tov. Then it won't be a fast. So we're never going to fast on Shabbat for Asara b'Tevet. But nonetheless, because of this idea of the Abu Draham, so different throughout the generations, different explanations have been given. Why would it be? There are those who say, actually, I think it's Rav Yonatan Eibschitz writes that in the first year, when Asara b'Tevet, when the siege began, he says then it was on Shabbat. So then it was on Shabbat. That's why it would be on Shabbat as well. There are others who say that all the fasts are addressed by the month, not necessarily by the date. Right? The pasuk in Tzom Ravi'i, Tzom Chamishi, Tzom Shvi, Tzom Asiri. Asara b'Tevet is called Tzom Asiri in that pasuk, but that's not because it's on the 10th of the month, but it's because it's in the 10th month, right? Counting the months, of course, from Nisan. But here in the psukim, you see Asara b'Tevet. It's not just addressed by the month; it's also got the specific date as well, the day in the month. Maybe that's one. And then there's the Khatam Sofer. And Khatam Sofer says an amazing explanation as well, again based on related to everything we've spoken about. But he says there is somewhere else we find in Halakha where one is permitted to fast on Shabbat. Again, we don't do it; it's not so common nowadays. But all the voluntary fasts, once upon a time, were much more common. But Tanit Chalom, when a person has a dream, a person has a bad dream and has a Tanit about it, that one could do. It's brought in Halacha. That could be even on Shabbat. So says the Khatam Sofer. He says when we don't fast on Shabbat is when we're fasting about what happened in the past, that which came previously. However, when the fast is about the future, when the fast about there's something has happened or something's going to happen, you want to prevent it. A person has a Tanit Chalom, there's a bad omen, they want to prevent something from happening, so then that would be allowed. So says the Khatam Sofer, I understand, based on this Abu Draham and based on the Psukim and based on this idea, that on Asara b'Tevet, we're not fasting about what was, but we're fasting about what will be. He says that there is a decision that is being made in heaven on this day, right? I know that the books are open on Rosh Hashanah, between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, but says the Khatam Sofer that something happened on Asara b'Tevet as well. What's going to be the state of Yerushalayim, what's going to be Tisha B'Av in the coming years, it's still going to be a continuation of the Churban, or is it going to be a time of rebuilding? He says, again, this is the Asara b'Tevet is the beginning, it's the root cause. Maybe that's why. It's the root cause of the siege, it's where it begins. And that's the time where there is the opportunity to change things as well. So says the Khatam Sofer, based on that is why the Abu Draham says what he says. Okay, as we've said, practically speaking, we're not going to be fasting on Shabbat, but it gives us a bit of a sense of the gravity of this day, of the understanding, and we should be what we should be thinking about, and what we should be praying about, and what we should, as every fast, as we know, we learn from the Psukim in Yonah. But the fast is one component. But the fast is meant to bring us to tshuva. It's meant to bring about introspection. It's meant to arise us to a tefillah that is more heartfelt, and that's an integral part, as important, if not more important, than the fast itself. Rabbi Chananya ben Akashya Omer, Tzakadosh Baruch Hu Ezakot Yisrael, לפיכך בא להם תורה ומצוות, שנאמר בני חפץ זמן, צדקו יגדיל תורה וידע.